Hi everyone! In this video I'm going to talk you through some of the features of your scientific calculator. I'm going to be using the same model that's shown in the picture here, so it's the Casio FX85GT+. If you've got a slightly different model, then most of the features will be the same or very similar, but if you're not using a Casio calculator or it's a very different model, then some of the features I'm going to talk you through might be a bit different. So the things I'm going to talk through are how to use the Shift and Alpha buttons in your calculator, how to use Mode and Setup, the Fraction button, the SD button, how to change between Degrees and Radians, and how to use the Fix, Scientific Notation and Normal settings in your calculator, as well as how to put in numbers with powers and numbers in Scientific Notation. So I'm going to use this camera to show you my calculator. It might be a little bit blurry, so if you have your own calculator handy, then the best thing to do is just to try and follow what I'm doing with your own calculator and you'll be able to see it more clearly, like that. Okay, so the first thing I said I'd show you was how to use the Shift and the Alpha buttons up the top here. So these will let you access more functions on your calculator that you can see written onto the actual calculator itself, not on the buttons. So to give you an example, I'm going to use a button down the bottom that says times 10 to the power of x. And I'll get in how to use that later on in the video. But for now, if I just press it, you'll see times 10 has come up on the display of the calculator. Just going to clear that. Above the button on the calculator itself, there's a wee yellow pi symbol. If I press the Shift button first, then that same button, I see pi. So the reason that happened is because Shift is yellow, and that's going to let me do any of the yellow buttons instead of the main one that's written on the button itself. So the yellow Shift lets me do the yellow thing, which is pi. If I clear that, the Alpha button is pink. That's going to let me do the pink thing, which is a wee E. So if I press Alpha, then the same button, I see an E on the display. Okay, so that's how you can use the Shift and the Alpha buttons. Next I'll show you the Mode setting. You shouldn't need to go into this very often. The setting that you'll always want your calculator to be in for school is 1, where it said comp. The only reason you might need to go in there is if maybe a button's been hit by accident in your bag. Sometimes people show me this one here and say, how do I get my calculator out of this setting? Because your calculator won't work as you're normally used to it working if this is written in your display here. So if that's the case, you just hit Mode, press 1, and it will work as normal. On the same button as Mode is Setup, so because it's yellow, I'm going to press Shift, then the same button, and I'll get more options. So there's 1 to 8 here. I'm going to talk you through most of these. If you press down, there are more options, but I'm not going to get into those in this video. So the first two options are MTH and line. I'm going to show you what those mean. So the MTH is for maths, and this is the way that you can input numbers and the way numbers can be displayed on your calculator. Most of you will probably like the maths setting because this lets you use the fraction button. That I know can be useful for lots of your calculations. The line option is for a more linear way of inputting numbers and having your numbers displayed as well. So if I go for a 1, first of all, I'm going to get another option, and this is asking me how I want my results to look, so how I want the answers that are going to be displayed in the calculator to look. So my first choice was how do I want to put numbers in. So if I've chosen the maths option there, that means I'll be able to put numbers in this form of fraction, so being able to put that kind of top number and bottom number up and down like that. Now it's asking me if I want the result to be the same. Can I have the result in the maths setting, so that up and down number, or a more linear setting? I'll show you both. So let's go for maths first of all. So everything was maths there. If I press the fraction button, I see it in that format, the up and down numbers, so I can press 1 over 5. If I press equals, it's given me it in the same format and the answer as well. Even if I do it as a calculation, so remember 1 over 5 means 1 divided by 5. If I press equals, it's going to give me that maths format of the answer as well. It's still going to give me it as a fifth. If I go back into settings, so Shift, Setup, Hit Maths again, but this time say that I want my result format to be linear. Press 2. This will probably be the most popular setting for you because your answers, we want to have them generally as a decimal number like that we can then round appropriately. You might want to use the fraction buttons for some fraction questions, so that's why it's good to have the options here. So because I've still had Maths as my first choice, I've still got the fraction here, 1 over 5 equals 1 over 5. So even in this linear setting, it'll still just copy. If I put a fraction in, it'll still give me a fraction as an answer. But what's different is if I put a calculation, like 1 divided by 5, it'll give me the decimal form of the answer instead of a fifth. Okay, lots of you will probably already be aware that you can switch between forms using the SD button. So whatever setting you're in, whether you're in the Maths or the linear setting, if you decide you want it in another form, you can press SD and it will give you the choice. Just keep pressing SD and it'll go between the different forms of writing that number, a fifth or 0.2. If you have a recurring decimal, so 1 divided by 3, 0.33333, that keeps going, pressing the SD button, show me as a fraction, 1 divided by 3, pressing it again, shows me as 0.3 with a dot above it. Just be careful of that dot if you are doing a calculation where you need to give a rounded answer. 0.3 is not so problematic, but if you have something like 2 divided by 3, or 2/3, 2/3 is a fraction, 0.6 recurring, if we want to give a rounded value there, it's going to be 0.6667, depending on how many decimal places or significant figures you want to round to. Okay, I'm just going to go back into that setting once more to show you the line option. So instead of picking Maths, if you decide you want the linear approach, when you press the fraction button now, things look a wee bit different. Still does work to put in fractions, but to put in 2/3, I'd have to hit 2 and then use that fraction button to mean over 3, which again means 2 divided by 3. And that's copying it in the display, 2 over 3 to mean 2/3, but again I can press the SD button to change the form of that. So as I said, the most popular setting for you will probably be Shift, Setup, 1 for Maths, that'll let you put the fraction values in, but then 2 to get a linear response and not have the fraction in your display. If you do end up with an answer that's not in the form you want it to be in, hit SD. Okay, next I'm going to show you how to switch between degrees and radians. So again, that's in Shift and Setup. And this is pretty easy. You can see there's number 3 for degrees, number 4 for radians. So this will affect you if you're doing advanced higher maths. If you press 3, your calculator will be in degrees settings. Shift, Setup. If you press 4, your calculator will be in radians. There is a very small symbol up here at the top of your calculator to tell you what settings that you're in. So right now there's a small R to show me that I'm in radians. If I go Shift, Setup, 3 for degrees, there's a very small D to show me I'm in D for degrees. There's also Math next to it to show that I'm in the Math setting, which is, remember, the one that lets you input fractions like that. Okay, next I want to show you number 6, which is fix. And this is how you can use your calculator to round to a certain number of decimal places. So if you press 6, it asks you how many decimal places you want going from 0 to 9. So if you have a calculation you want to round your answer to 2 decimal places, you can press 2 in there and it will make sure the answer has exactly 2 decimal places. So let's go for 2/3 again. 2 divided by 3. Instead of 0.6 recurring or 0.66666, it's given me it in a format with 2 decimal places and rounded correctly as well. So it's not just chopped off the number after 66, it has rounded it to say that's closer to 0.67 than it is to 0.66. Going back into Setup, Shift, Setup, we could go to number 7. Number 7 is going to give an answer in scientific notation. Here it's asking how many significant figures I want my answer to be in scientific notation. So if I press 3, it's go for 20,000 divided by 3. That's 6.67 times 10 to the power of 3. So our three significant figures there, 6, 6, 7. Just picked a similar calculation there to show you that it does round again the same way the fixed option does, but it's also given the answer in scientific notation. To get out of that, if you go to Shift Setup, if you want a normal way of writing numbers instead of this scientific notation, you press 8 for normal. And you've got another option. In the normal setting, you will still get answers in scientific notation if they're big enough or small enough to really justify that. What these options do is determine where the cutoff is for it being a normal number, like 200, as opposed to writing it as 2 times 10 to the power 2. If you hit option 2 here, you'll get the bigger range, so you'll get fewer answers in scientific notation. They have to be really quite big or really quite small for that to happen. So if you're in normal, you probably want option 2. And that'll give you things like 1 divided by 1,000 as a decimal number like that. Even 1 divided by 100,000. Whereas, if I just show you quickly, if you go into Setup, 8 for normal, but option 1, then 1 divided by 100,000 is still given to you in scientific notation. If you have your answer in scientific notation already and you want to change it into a decimal number, so say a question gives you a number in scientific notation and you want to check what that means as a normal number, then you can use your calculator to do that. So how to put a number in scientific notation? You want to use this button down the bottom here. Times 10, and the wee x up the top is asking you what the power is. Remember, x just stands for a number, so this is times 10 to the power of something. So if I want to put 2 times 10 to the power of 5 into my calculator, I can hit 2 times 10 to the power 5. I don't have to put 5 as a small number up the top like you're used to writing it, because this button is already expecting a power. It's already got the x up the top there, so it knows that that's what the 5's to do. And then it gives me my value is 2 times 10 to the power 5. It's given me it as a normal number because that's the setting that I've currently got my calculator in. If I had it in scientific notation, I would just end up with exactly the same thing coming up in my display. If it's not times 10 to the power that you want to do, but you still want to use your calculators for powers, you can use these buttons up here. There's one specifically for squared. That's got a wee 2 at the top, so if I want to put in 10 squared or 7 squared, you can use that button there. If it's not a squared but any other power, we use the one next to it that's just got a blank box for the power, so that's to let you put in whatever power you want. So if I want to put in 5 cubed, press 5, use that wee button, and this time we do see that it's gone high, and it'll let you put in a 3. 5 cubed, 125. Okay, final thing, if I have a number as a normal way of writing it, and I want to change that into scientific notation, I can keep the number in the calculator, go into the setup, hit 7 for scientific notation, choose my number of significant figures, and it saved the number that I had in it but changed its format. And that works the other way as well. If you've got a number in scientific notation, 3 times 10 to the power 8, and you want to know what that looks like not in scientific notation, don't clear your calculator, keep it there, go Shift, Setup, 8 for normal. Remember, this is choosing your range of what would go in scientific notation and what wouldn't, so I want the biggest range of normal numbers, number 2, and we get it written as a normal number there. Okay, turn my calculator off. There's a wee yellow off button there, so I press yellow Shift and off. So I've just got a wee summary for you here on what we've talked about. So Shift and Alpha let you choose the coloured functions. Mode should be in one comp. Setup you can use for fraction use, and you can choose the result as well, so that's how it's displayed in your calculator. Do you want that to be a fraction or do you want it to be a linear? The fraction button can be used to input problems in either setting, although it does look a bit different in the linear setting. It doesn't have the up and down numbers that it does in the math setting. The SD button changes the form of your answers. You can switch between degrees and radians. You can set to round to a specific number of decimal places, and you can ask your calculator to give you an answer in either scientific notation or a normal way of writing numbers, and you can use the times 10 to the power button to input numbers in scientific notation. Okay, hope you found that helpful.